Java-based framework in order to create your faster application. I can go for a concept called as your Spring Boot framework actually. And this Spring Boot developed by a team called as your Pivotal team. Okay, it is developed by a team called as your Pivotal team. So developed by Pivotal team. It is developed by your Pivotal team. It was developed. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So it is also one of a Java-based framework in order to develop your in order to develop your faster application. I can go for the Spring Boot framework. I can go for, and it is developed by a team called as your Pivotal team. Okay, it is developed by a team called as your Pivotal team. Okay. And next we are going to discuss about the advantage of using your Spring Boot concept actually. The first advantage, it is easy to understand. It is easy to understand and develop faster application. Okay, it is very simple concept only. Develop faster application. So it will be always easy to understand. And why we are going for the Spring Boot now, in order to develop your faster application, we can go for the Spring Boot concept. Since it is used to develop your faster application, it is going to increase your productivity. It is going to increase your productivity, and it is going to reduces your development time. Okay, it is going to reduces your development time. It will be reduced, and it is going to increase your productivity of your application. And one more very, very important advantage of using this particular Spring Boot framework is that, and as I already told before, in the case of your Spring framework, we have to download so many jar files, and what we have to do, we have to do all the
Configuration.
And where we do all the configuration?
XML.
One more important advantage of using your Spring Boot is that avoid your XML
Configuration.
Okay, there is no need to go for an XML configuration in the case of your Spring Boot actually. The Spring Boot, and everything is going to be auto configured. Okay, avoid your XML configuration, and in the case of your Spring Boot, everything is going to be
Automatically.
Okay, everything is going to be auto configured. We are not going to do any configuration. We are not going to do, everything is going to be auto configured in the case of your Spring Boot concept. And the next advantage of using your Spring Boot is that, okay, and actually we didn't study that particular module in the case of your Spring framework actually. And so how many modules does my Spring framework provides?
7
Seven modules. Yeah. So we have discussed only 2 modules called us.
Spring Boot.
4 modules, context module.
Context module.
Yeah. We have AOP module, DAO module, ORM module, Webflow module, and the last module is called as what?
MVC module.
And MVC module actually. And what is that MVC module now? So in the case of your Spring framework itself, if I want to develop any web application based on
MVC architecture.
So guys,
MVC architecture.
Yeah, MVC architecture. So guys, answer, like whenever you're going to develop any web application now, compulsory that should be some. Any idea? Whenever you're going to develop any web application, compulsory there should be some. Okay, what is web application now? What is web application means?
Client side application.
Client and
Backend
server actually. So we are the client actually. So we are going to give the request to the server actually. We are going to give the request to the server. So whenever you're going to develop any web application, now obviously there should be some
Request and response.
where you'll give request, and who will give response.
Client will give request and server will give response.
So who is responsible for giving the response?
Server.
Server actually. Yeah. So whenever you're going to develop any web application, compulsory that should be a
Server.
server should be there actually. Okay, that should be a server should be there actually. So if I'm going to develop an EJP application, or if I'm going to develop any and J2W if I'm going to develop any web application based upon EJP concept, or based upon JSP servlets concept, or based upon Spring MVC framework and all, we have to explicitly configure the server actually. Okay, we have to explicitly configure the server. But in case of your Spring Boot is that the Spring Boot comes with your embedded servers. Okay, Spring Boot comes with what? What is embedded server now? What is embedded server? It is by default
Present inside.
inside your local server. Embedded server like Tomcat. Okay, so Tomcat server will be there. So this will be the default server. So by default it comes, and by default your Spring Boot will comes with what server? Tomcat server actually. Okay, that is your default server. Apart from that, we have Jetty server is there, and we have Undertow server. Okay, we have an Undertow server will be there actually. But so that is one of an advantage of using your Spring Boot actually. So if I'm going to develop any web application with the help of JSP or JSP servlets, or with the help of EJP, or with the help of your Spring framework and all, we have to explicitly configure the Tomcat server. Okay, normally we'll be using your Tomcat server. So we have to explicitly configure your Tomcat server actually. But your Spring Boot comes with your inbuilt server or embedded servers like
Tomcat.
Undertow actually. And which server by default it will be coming?
Tomcat.
By default it will be coming with your Tomcat server, or else you can able to change to Jetty server, or you can able to change to your Undertow server actually. Okay, and the next advantage you can able to say about your Spring Boot is that the Spring Boot is mainly you can able to develop a server-side application. Okay, you can able to say it is used to develop what type of application we can able to develop. Use it to develop server-side application, or even in simple words, I can able to say a backend application. Okay, I can able to develop a backend application. So if I talk about backend application, what my backend application will do, the backend application is going to and communicate with what?
Database.
Front
Front
end.
end.
Database.
Database actually. Okay, it is going to communicate with your database actually. So if I'm going to develop my JSP servlets, or I'm going to develop my web application with EJP, or if I'm going to develop my web application with the help of your Spring framework and all, we have to separately create your databases. It might be a MySQL database, an Oracle database, it can be any database actually. But another advantage of using your Spring Boot is that the Spring Boot also comes with an embedded database called as the database. Okay, it comes with your embedded, or you can able to say a in-memory database actually. Okay, in-memory database called as your H2 database. Okay, it is called as your H2 database actually. So your Spring Boot comes with your in-memory or inbuilt database called as your
H2 database.
inbuilt database called as your H2 databases actually. Okay, and the next advantage of the Spring Boot framework is that, okay, so whenever you develop any application, okay, if I want to print something in the console now, what I'll be using? System.out.println, like that we'll be using actually. Okay, but now I don't want to use my system.out.println. Instead, I want to print in the console using logging framework actually. Okay, so we have a framework called as logging framework actually, like log4j framework and all there. So because if I use my system.out.println and the first time it will be printed, but if I run on the second time now, can I able to see the previously printed information?
No, sir.
No, you can't able to see actually. But I want to log all those information. I want to store those information somewhere now. In that, at the time of printing, I want to store information somewhere now. In that case, I can able to go for a framework called as log4j framework actually. So in the case of your Spring or in the case of your EJP and all, if I want to use my log4j framework now, then we have to configure all the dependency in your pom.xml file. We need to configure manually. We need to configure actually. But another advantage of using your Spring Boot is that the Spring Boot comes with your default logging framework. Spring Boot comes with Spring boot logging boot starter logging, which supports default logging framework like